Good afternoon, good evening, all that good stuff. Thank you for joining me. Once again, please subscribe, hit that button, hit the bell, because then that notifies you when a video is made. I want to thank you for giving me your time and attention. Much appreciated, because those are two things that you can't get back. So, this video is a continuation of the one that I just did. This is going to focus more on this Roe v. Wade and abortion. And was this decision, right, to overturn Roe v. Wade, is this a precursor to lay the foundation for mandatory jabby jabs? Now, because of the YouTube algorithm, obviously, ever since 2017 in that Bilderberg meeting, and certain other YouTubers that had hate speech, certain things you just can't speak on YouTube. So when I say jabby jab, I'm talking about this. Okay? Anytime you hear me say jabby jab, I'm talking about this. If you hear me say Roni Rona, I'm talking about what you need this for. Okay? So jabby jab equals this. Anytime you hear me pause when I read something, it's because this word is mentioned. Fortunately, you have to do that. So in this video, I would like to really go in, but I'm not able to go in, so I'm going to have to really read between the lines. Now, also, is this something, because all of these things, of course, planned in advance. Are these decisions that you see also a tactic and a ploy to get people to vote Democrat for these midterm elections? Okay? And I'm going to explain why I say that. So this video is going to cover two things. Is this decision with Roe v. Wade to be overturned, is this something that's going to lead as a precedent for the jabby jab, mandatory jabby jabs, not fake mandatory, but like you have no choice? And is this something that the Democrats are going to use to try to siphon votes? Because let's face it, nobody's voting Democratic. So with that said, here's why I say that. Anytime, like I said in the last video that I did, when you see these issues like gun control and abortion, those two issues are linked. If you look, especially during this pandemic, you won't see one without the other. They're not too far behind, right? Now, there's certain issues in this country that really hit to the core of freedom and basic human rights. The reason why I suggest this book is called Vaccine Epidemic is because, I said the V word, because this book actually covers the legality of the jabby jab, and it also covers legal precedent, and it also covers how certain things are human rights issues, and how the Supreme Court, being the highest law of the land, they're pretty much gods, right? That's why they wear the black robes. They're ruled by Saturn. These are basically your 9 ordered gods and deities that pretty much lay the smackdown for how our behavior is going to be codified in this country. So there's major issues that once the Supreme Court lays down as law, it can make or break your freedoms. Some of these issues, as you see, the two major ones that's in the news now, which are linked, gun control and abortion, okay? Those two are there. But there's also the jabby jab, right? And there's also your right to life, right? Or your right to death. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't know how many of you remember Jack Kevorkian, right? I might be dating myself. But basically, he was a doctor that assisted people in, suicides. If you wanted to off yourself, this gentleman obliged you with his services to help you off yourself. Now, that was also a big legal issue. How are all of these things related? Because these things pose questions. Does a person have a right to kill themselves? Does someone else have a right to assist someone in killing themselves? Because if it's your body, then I guess you have a right to take it, but then you would be committing some kind of murder of sorts, even though it's yourself. It's the same thing with the jabby jab, right? With these precedents, if it's a public health issue, then certain things override individual rights for the greater good. So all of these things set as precedent for one another. So when you see these things in the media, the red flag should go off. Is like, okay, if they're restricting a person's right to have control over their body in any way, regardless if you agree with it, it might be a victory on one end, but it's not far-fetched to think that the hammer won't fly down on the other end. Now, for those that saying these things are completely unrelated to each other, see my other video that I did when it showed how California is actually using Senate Bill 8 from Texas as a precedent to restrict guns, because Texas, with Senate Bill 8, allows people to sue anybody getting an abortion or those assisting those getting an abortion. So the governor wanted to use that as precedence to restrict certain kind of gun ownerships and ghost guns. So they're overlapping these two issues. So it's not far-fetched to think that if now Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would be different if they used this Supreme Court ruling to say, no, you can't get an abortion, and then flip it and say, you must get this, right? That's not far-fetched. So that's something that we need to look at, especially during this pandemic, because all of these things are happening during the pandemic, which is why these things are going down, because this is the reset. All of these movies that you see about the future and then how everything is futuristic, a lot of those come after these chaotic times. They don't never mention that. They make light of it. They say it was a big pandemic or something happened and it started to threaten humanity, and then everything changed, and then there was a big overhaul, and then you had this futuristic type of setting. So that's what we're going on now. We are in the chaos setting where everything is being restructured. So I think that this decision is a precursor to the overall end game, okay? Because these things came out the blue. So that's something that we should look at. Also, this is also something that Democrats can use in order to siphon votes, because this regime, this Biden administration is trash. He's probably the worst president to ever exist. Outside of the slave-owning presidents, who always take the cake as the worst, I think he's probably the worst post-slavery president ever, okay? Because a lot of these presidents are racist anyway. But I think after slavery, Biden might be the wackest president. Now, why do I say that the Democrats are using this or will use this to benefit them? And here's why I say all of this is also part of the program. Because Republicans, Democrats, they're all wings of the same bird. Left wing, right wing. They all play off each other. They all have the same objective. They just speak it differently. That's it. This is from Representative Ronnie Jackson, right? This came out in around November of 2021. Representative Ronnie Jackson says, Rona variant, right? Just show that right there because I can't say it. Representative Ronnie Jackson says the Rona variant is Democratic hoax to justify new ballot rules. Representative Ronnie Jackson, Republican of Texas, of course Texas, right? All of the Rona states with the highest fudge numbers, New York, Texas, Cali, Florida, those are the 4 states that dominate your news, okay? So if you want to see where the country goes, you follow those 4 states. Also why these 4 states have dominated your sports since this pandemic began. There's no teams that have won more across American sports since this pandemic began than those 4 states. And if they haven't won, they've appeared in the conference finals or deep in the playoffs. All right, but that's a whole nother video. So I'm reading this to show that even the Republicans say that these so-called variants, these new boogeymans, right, that these things are hoaxes. He calls it a hoax, right? This isn't my words, this is his words. And he's saying that they're doing this, and I'm going to read it, in order to siphon votes for the election. Representative Ronnie Jackson, representative of Texas, says Omicron is just the latest deep state plot to distract America. The former White House physician claimed the worrisome variant is a hoax that Democrats will use to impose new Rona mail-in ballot rules. Here comes the MEV, the midterm election variant. They need a reason to push unsolicited nationwide mail-in ballots. Jackson, who holds a medical degree, tweeted. Now, this is a medical degree Republican out of Texas saying this. Democrats will do anything to cheat during an election, but we're not going to let them, Jackson added. So, with this ruling with Roe v. Wade, with the Curious George pox that's out, with all of these variances, which just so happens to all be coming out now, it seems that all of these could be leading to pushing people to vote Democrat. Because if you look at these issues, Republicans, they're not for it, right? They're not for gun control. They're for abortion. They're not for abortion, okay? And they pretty much was calling BS on a lot of the Rona and mandates that was coming out. So that's something to look at as well. So when you see these things in the news, look at it from a better lens. Don't look at it at what they call face value. Look at it from a deeper standpoint, because these things don't come out of nowhere. You don't see Roe v. Wade come right after gun laws. That just doesn't happen. And then all of this happens during the pandemic, and then all of this happens during the midterm elections, when you have pretty much all the Democrats across the country that's upset about this decision. So don't be surprised if between now and November, right, as they push these midterm elections, if you don't see this being mentioned as the next thing to be ruled upon, because Biden already said they're preparing for the next pandemic, whatever that means. What is he saying, right? So if there's a next pandemic to come, that means that there's a next Casper virus to come out. And if there's a next Casper virus to come out, you best believe this is going to be in the solution to get rid of that. So if this is going to be the solution to get rid of that, don't be surprised if they use this Roe v. Wade as a precedent to override individual rights for public safety, as they say. It's already been attempted during this pandemic, except you can't forcibly make them, but you can forcibly make them, right? Jacobson versus Massachusetts is the foundation case which decides that. So I just wanted to make this video to show that this Roe v. Wade could be a gateway to mandatory, real mandatory jabby jabs, and used as a precedent to justify it. Because if they can say this is an overriding of your individual rights where you can't decide as a woman to have an abortion, it's not far-fetched to think this is the case. And don't think Democrats won't use this to pull on your heartstrings to say, look, we support a woman's right to choose. Look, we support gun control. Vote for us because the Republicans are putting this country in the toilet. Okay? So those two things is what's happening. So look out for that. Don't be surprised. Don't be tricked. Don't fall for the okie doke, because all of these things are linked. So your right to live or suicide, right to die, your jabby jab, your gun laws, and your abortion laws are things that will always be juggled in the media when it comes to individual rights versus the public good. And don't think that they're separate, because they're not. So that's that. With that, thank you for your attention. Please subscribe. Hit that bell, because I will be giving you all some money once the subscriptions come to a certain point. And peace.